Dobrze, dzień dobry Państwu. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is very nice to have you all here and present to you the conclusions of the OECD Economic Survey of Poland. We are very happy to have guests from OECD as well as Ministry of Health. The short agenda is that we will start by a word of introduction of the Vice Rector of SGH Warsaw School of Economics, followed by a word from the Chief Economist from OECD, Mr. Alvaro Pereira. And afterwards, we will have the main presentation of the OECD report by the co-author of the report, Ms. Zuzanna Smidowa. And later on, we will have the discussion panel, and I will introduce the panelists right before the panel. So the word of introduction of Vice Rector of SGH Warsaw School of Economics.
Do I need a mic? I hope I don't. Actually, I have to confess I hate this thing. I need, unfortunately. You see who actually holds power here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to welcome you here. My name is Krzysztof Kozłowski, and I'm a Vice Rector for Teaching and Student Affairs at Warsaw School of Economics. And I have to confess that whenever I'm dealing with OECD, I always face a certain personal challenge. On one hand, we have very esteemed guests here. Mr. Alvaro, it's a pleasure to see you here. Ms. Smidowa, I'm impressed with the report. She is the author, she is here, so she's the author of the report. However, on the other hand, I also have to share a short personal story. Actually, when we were entering, when we joined OECD, it was 2/3 of my life ago. I was in a high school, and I had absolutely no idea what is going on, and absolutely no idea what this OECD thing was about. And actually, I have to confess that 30 years later, I can't be more impressed. And I believe all of us here can't be more impressed. In times when disinformation is the norm, in times when the shallow analysis prevails, I believe that such reports as this one are even more useful and more wanted by our students, but also by the general public. And I believe this stood behind the idea of joining OECD. I have a privilege of representing the university that actually did quite a lot in these regards. Just to mention Professor Balcerowicz, then Professor Kołotko, who then was professor of our university, Professor Hybna, all of them were involved in the process, and at the same moment they were professors of this university. Of course, we can't and should not forget about Professor Szostak, who was the first representative of Poland at OECD. And all these people made this possible on the Polish part. And I have to say that just like 30 years ago, I was a little bit confused, high school student, not understanding fully what is going on. Right now, I feel privileged that these 30 years later, I have an opportunity to welcome OECD representatives to this university, and I have a pleasure of opening an event consecrated to presenting the report on our country. I believe I also had the privilege of looking into it already yesterday. It's a privilege of being a vice rector. However, I think that the insights that the authors are sharing with us are extremely important, useful, and I hope they will be used by our decision makers. One more thing that was not mentioned in this short agenda, as far as the panelists are concerned, they are in very capable hands of Professor Eliza Przeździecka. I can't imagine more competent person to organize such a panel. Professor Eliza, it's always a pleasure to see you in such events, and it's a pleasure. but also Minister Katarzyna, who is also member of our SGH society, if I may say, and Professor and Vice Dean Peter. You know, there is a trick between us. We always push one another. That's why he makes these faces. He can't wait till I finish. And finally, also the main advisor of the major economist of OECD, Mr. Kozluk. Thank you very much for finding time for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's high time for me to stop. I'm an academic, so I have this tendency to talk too much, and give floors to our esteemed guest, the economist, the main economist of the OECD. Alvaro, could you please join us?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vice Rector. Sorry, first of all, sorry for being a bit more relaxed than usual. Usually I have my suit and tie, but I'm straight to the airport. I wanted to be here for two reasons. First of all, it's a pleasure being here at Warsaw School of Economics. We've had contacts with you and in Paris exactly to try to strengthen cooperation. The economics department at the OECD has basically two big branches. One that does surveys that Susanna is going to present. So we do surveys for national economies for over 60 countries, from New Zealand to Poland to Latin America and Africa. And then another part, we do research on AI, on climate adaptation, climate mitigation, foundations for growth, and industrial policy, many, many, many things. So what I wanted to say is, we usually take not too many per university, but we take some university students to stay with us and to do an internship with us. And if you're interested, we'll be more than happy to talk to you and the administration of the Warsaw School of Economics to welcome you there. But what matters is, at the OECD, what we do, we try to understand good policies, what are the structural reforms that countries need to undertake to get better economic performance. And so that's why we're delighted to come here. We came here just to launch the latest Poland survey. Poland is doing good, as you'll see, but like we always say to every country, well done, but you need to do more in this and this and this. Maintain the reformist attitude that I think the Vice Rector was mentioning. That is important. But anyway, it's a pleasure being here. So with that, I think it's better to hear what we have to say in this survey. And Susanna is going to present that to you. And then Thomas will be also in the panel. Thank you very much. And so look forward to welcoming you and to strengthen cooperation between the School of Economics and the OECD. Thank you.
Okay, if I can get the microphone running, that sounds all right. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be here today. Thank you, Alvaro and Vice Rector, for the introductions. I am one of the authors of the report. And before I get into the details of what this report is about, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased to be here at your university. I've had the opportunity to hear many of your professors and read your research when working on this report, because of course we always look at what the academics and what the national experts are saying. And I've had the opportunity to see your professors in other events, but it's my first time being at the university. So, dzień dobry i dziękuję za możliwość przedstawienia dzisiaj nowego raportu OECD na temat polskiej gospodarki. As you can see, the Poland's economic standards have increased significantly over the past 2 decades. And when we measure them in terms of GDP per capita using PPPs, they have doubled. And Poland has narrowed significantly the gap with its regional peers. Progress has slowed in recent years as the pandemic and Russia's war on Ukraine took their toll. But last year's GDP result shows that the economy seems to be back on track, and I'll get to that later on. Oops, sorry. The economy regained momentum in 2024, and it returned, if we look into more details, it returned to growth actually in the second half of 2023. Sorry, everything is falling apart, so I might just take this off and use the stand. Is that better? Okay, thanks. So the economy has regained momentum and returned to growth in the second half of 2023. Last year's number of growth of almost 3% shows that this momentum is continuing. We can see clearly this great performance at the labor market. Poland has reached a record low unemployment rate, and also the number of people that are working is quite high, over 17 million, and it has reached pre-pandemic levels. Now, one issue that the Polish economy is facing is inflation. Headline inflation has fallen sharply from its peak at the beginning of 2023. And a recent, last year's withdrawal of food support measures and energy support measures has pushed the inflation back up, basically in this part of the graph. At the same time, so it remains above the central bank's target. At the same time, core inflation is also still relatively elevated. And this is all in the context of that strong labor market we have seen at the slide earlier. Now, we are fairly optimistic about the Polish economy. Last year's growth of 2.9%, according to the flash estimate, is quite strong. We expect this year also to this momentum to continue, and the year after, next year, slightly lower, but still growth of 3% is a relatively enviable position to be in, especially if you look around your neighbors, where the growth forecast isn't that great. In terms of inflation, let me just say that we expect the inflation to be relatively above the target this year still, but that's linked to our assumptions based on assumptions about withdrawal of this further energy support measures towards the end of the year. And actually in our projection, we do see inflation coming back to the target, central bank's target, towards the end of, in the second half of 2026. So in this macroeconomic context, the report highlights 4 policy priorities for continued strengthening of living standards and resilience of the economy going forward. And the first one is improving fiscal sustainability. The others consist of maintaining strong productivity growth, continuing reforms of the healthcare system, and accelerating a reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. And I will now go one by one in more detail. As you know, the Polish public finances have deteriorated, and there are also future spending pressures. So the current government is planning a relatively substantial fiscal adjustment in the coming years, and this should improve the position, but also bring the debt on a declining trend. Now, Poland doesn't have a high debt compared to many other OECD countries, but there are pressures, A, from aging, and B, also from the green transition. And it's always good to have that maneuver to be able to act like Poland did and many other countries did during the pandemic and during the energy crisis. So we think that the substantial fiscal consolidation that the government is planning should be implemented, and that narrowing this deficit will improve fiscal sustainability for now, but also allow for a better balance between the monetary and the fiscal policies. To support the government, or to support this consolidation, we think that measures both on the revenue and expenditure side should be part of the consolidation. I will now give you one example of one area where we think there is scope for reviewing the existing expenditures. Basically, Poland allocates more than 3% of GDP to family policy today, which is well above what most other OECD countries do. Now, on the graph, you see just a selection of countries, but if we were to include all of the OECD countries, Poland is on the high end, perhaps not the highest. And we think that this is great in terms of fighting poverty. Nevertheless, a number of these more recent benefits are universal. Basically, they are for everybody, regardless of income. And you could review the fact whether these families need these benefits and whether withdrawing them from the higher income people and using them for other policies would make more sense. By targeting better, you could still achieve the same policy goals of preventing child poverty and creating a good family environment, but not necessarily paying this money to people who don't necessarily need it, i.e. those on high incomes. We also think that public revenues can be raised more efficiently and fairly in Poland. So there's a number of points that the report raises on the revenue side. For instance, value-added tax base could be increased by reducing the number of items in the lower rates, preferential rates. Also, you could review your tax expenditures. There's many, and there used to be a report that did this, but for quite some time, the state budget does not use this kind of reporting anymore. And this is what the slide focuses on, we think that there is scope to raise more revenue from property taxation, as a number of OECD countries do. You will see that there's quite a few countries on this part of the figure raising more revenues from property taxation. Now, Poland today taxes property or buildings based on the surface area, while most of other OECD countries actually use the value of that property. This is a more fair way of taxing property. The second, that was it about the fiscal situation and sort of consolidation ideas. The second priority that the report talks about is to maintain strong productivity growth by raising competitiveness of firms and the skills of the workforce. Productivity growth has been strong in recent years, and it has allowed Poland to approach sort of its peer countries in the region. And this is what has driven that substantial catch-up that we have in the living standards that we have seen in the earlier slide. Now, nevertheless, there's still a way to go, and so that's why we do talk about productivity in the report. We have identified several areas where we think that more competition in the economy would be useful. This is because we know that competition is good for productivity growth. And these areas concern in the services, lawyers, notaries, architects, civil engineers. So you will see that this index basically shows the stringency of regulation, so how anti-competitive your regulation is in these areas. And contrary to the other graphs here, you want to be at 0. So the lower this index, the better, the more competition-friendly your regulation is. So you can see that Poland is still lagging in these specific areas, is still behind the 5 most competition-friendly OECD countries. You could compare yourself to the average as well, but I think you want to be among the best. So this is an area where we would suggest you review the legislation, you look at what things are, how things are done in different countries. One specific sector, it's not really a sector, is governance of state-owned enterprises. And here in the Polish economy, state-owned enterprises play quite a significant role. And the OECD has, based on the best practices of experiences of OECD countries, put together a code of best practices on management and on state-owned enterprises. And here in that area, we see that there's quite a few areas that Poland could improve the way it's managing and governing state-owned enterprises in order to get more competitiveness in the economy. Now, in this area, we had the opportunity to use and work with colleagues from Statistics Poland, who produce a very interesting data on the firm level in Poland. And from this data, it's clearly, and from their analysis that is featured also in the survey, it's clear that it's true in Poland what is true in other OECD countries. That's the fact that more competition, in those sectors where there's more competition, the productivity growth has been faster. There's also an interesting insight that the productivity growth in the state-owned enterprises was relatively low compared to the other parts of the economy. But I'm sure that you are familiar with this data. If not, I definitely recommend you to look at it. It provides very good insights about the Polish economy from firm-level data. Now, Poland has, despite of what I said, Poland does have a favorable business environment, and the strong inflow of foreign direct investment into the country is clearly a mark of success. The reason that Poland has a well-educated workforce and a good business environment is attracting companies into this country. So it's important to continue maintaining this good environment, and also it's important to continue upskilling the workforce, because Poland is aging, so there's less people. Poland is also facing labor shortages as such, but also skill shortages. And despite the fact that Poland is among sort of top OECD performance in the student PISA tests, we don't necessarily see this translated in the general population. Now, this data is coming from PIAAC, which is another OECD large survey of adult skills. And it basically shows the share of adults with high-level skills in certain, so the level of the skills in problem-solving, literacy, numeracy is explained here. I have to say that there is a caution. The caution needs to be taken when interpreting this data for Poland, so only 10% of the adults having high skills. Nevertheless, 10 years ago, the picture was the same. So we can wonder sort of what is happening between when the kids, 15-year-olds, which we test in the PISA scores, and later on when they're at the labor market, why there isn't more of people with high skills already at the labor market. Now I can get to the third policy priority, and that is to continue reforming the healthcare system to improve the life quality in Poland. Life expectancy has increased by 5 years between 2000 and 2002, and now it stands at the highest in the Polish history, and this is great. Nevertheless, it is still lower than the OECD average and lags a number of your OECD neighbors. More than half of the deaths in Poland are due to diseases of the circulatory system and cancer. To an extent, these are preventable or treatable conditions. Poland doesn't spend a lot in terms of public spending, this slide is for total spending, in terms of spending on the healthcare system, but it has been increasing the resources that go into the healthcare system, and there has been a political consensus on this, and this is great, because you do need to put more money into the system. But it is important how you use that money that is being allocated to the healthcare. So there is a plan that by 2027, the public expenditure, public funding will increase to 7% of GDP, up from today's around 6%, 2023, 6%. And this will bring Poland closer to the OECD average. Healthcare services are widely available, which is good, but we think that the efficiency of the healthcare sector could be improved. And there's a number of reforms that have been already going on in the Polish healthcare system and that are still ongoing. One of them is this shift to an integrated care in the primary care sector, and this is very welcome. We think that there could be perhaps a stronger emphasis on prevention as well. Another example of an ongoing reform is streamlining the hospital sector. As you can see on this slide, the bed capacity remains above OECD average and above that of countries that achieve similar health outcomes. At the same time, coordination of hospital care remains fairly complex, and performance of hospitals varies quite a lot across the country, and we have a figure in the report that shows that. Now, we think that improving the organization of hospital care while ensuring that it respects the healthcare needs of the population in the regions, we think that this could raise quality and reduce overcapacity, including of the hospital beds. Poland has done a lot in terms of healthcare staff. The wages have risen and there's more doctors that are being trained, and this is great. Because Poland, like other OECD countries, has been facing a shortage of healthcare workers and healthcare workers going to work somewhere else. Nevertheless, we think that it is important to continue these efforts and to continue raising the number of training places, especially for nurses, as well as improving working conditions in the sector, because it's not only about the salary, but it's also about the working conditions in general. We also think that Poland should encourage healthier behaviors for better health outcomes. As you see on this graph, preventable mortality is high. Deaths due to alcohol and smoking in Poland are above the OECD average. More emphasis on prevention can help to reduce these behavioral risks and can also reduce in the medium to long term healthcare costs. In this respect, for instance, low participation in cancer screening should be boosted, and I think it is being boosted, but the efforts need to continue. At the same time, the excise taxes on tobacco and alcohol, again, they are increasing, but they have to continue increasing. At the same time, you could also review the opening hours of and the number of shops that are selling alcohol to restrict the use. And the last slide in this healthcare section, I would like to talk about long-term care. So, as you know, Poland is aging already, And as probably many of you know, either through your parents or through your grandparents, the long-term care is not easily accessible. It's underdeveloped in this country. And much of it remains provided informally by family members. This is difficult because these people then cannot participate in the labor market, and that plays again into the economy in terms of number of people that can actually work and sort of creates pressures in the labor market. The authorities, as far as we know, are sort of looking into how to develop the long-term care. And the experience of OECD countries is that long-term care can be very costly. And the financing pressures from long-term care are also something that you need to keep in mind in the medium to long term. So we would suggest that you develop a framework for long-term care and expand both residential and home-based care. The fourth priority that the report is talking about or focuses on is accelerating the green transition. Now, you probably would have seen this figure, the evolution of emissions in Poland over time. And from this, there has been progress, let's say that, decreasing from there to here. But the decrease going down to net zero is fairly steep and so very challenging. The economy still produces more emissions per unit of output than most other OECD countries. The cost, at the same time, the cost of climate change is being visible. The recent storm at the end of last year, Storm Boris, had significant impact, both in terms of lives, there were several deaths, but also in terms of damage to property. In the end of last year, the authorities have introduced a revised national energy and climate plan, and we very much welcome it. It's more ambitious, and it's an important step towards the climate transition. Now the question will be, or it will be very important to actually implement it. The next slide is also probably not news to you. There is a heavy reliance on coal in the Polish economy. This shows only the electricity production, but if we were to include heating and also industrial processes, the importance of coal is still quite significant. It did decrease last year, the preliminary estimates, to the lowest ever. This is great, and at the same time, the share coming from renewables has reached a relatively high share or higher share, 30%. Again, that's more than before. But if you compare Poland in 2024, that's where the EU was in 2015. So we think that basically a faster development of the infrastructure and permitting processes for the renewables would help you in weaning off coal and moving to other sources of energy. At the same time, the coal phase out could be faster, and there could be also a target set for the lignite coal, because right now there's only a phase-out target set for the hard coal. Now, a mix of policy tools is needed to continue the green transition to net zero. In transport, for instance, emissions have actually almost doubled since 2005. And this is a complicated area. Everybody wants to drive a nice car, and as we get richer, we tend to buy bigger cars. But with the right incentives, with the right taxation, you can actually steer people's choices. We think that linking vehicle taxation to emissions would help to green your car fleet. Now, the ministry is apparently working on a tax along these lines. We've heard that for a number of years now. But from what we know, it is that it will be only rolled out to company cars. That's not enough. It will have to be rolled out to include all cars. And at the same time, of course, the authorities do need to strengthen public transport to be able to offer different means of getting from place to another place. So in closing, let me just reiterate that the survey provides an opportunity to take a stock of this great progress that the Polish economy has made over the years. And I would just leave you perhaps with the main messages, with the key messages of the survey. The report is downloadable at that little card I gave you, we distributed at the beginning. We've also put out a blog and a little nice video, and I would be very happy to take your questions and listen to the panel afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Susanna. And a small few minutes to just change the settings, and we will invite everyone to the discussion panel. Okay, so once again, let me introduce our panelists, best experts which we could get. So we'll start by Ms. Katarzyna Kasperczyk, Deputy Minister of Health. Mr. Tomasz Koźluk, Advisor of the OECD Chief Economist. Piotr Maszczyk, Dr. Piotr Maszczyk, Head of Department of Macroeconomic and Public Economics Unit at Collegium of World Economy. Dr. Maciej Cygler, Assistant Professor at the Institute of International Economics, also Collegium of World Economy. And the moderator will be Professor Eliza Przeździecka, Director of the Institute of International Economics, as well from the Collegium of World Economy, from SGH.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to host this panel and run the discussion. Hopefully, we will highlight a bit more attention and the comments on the latest report by OECD, which is exceptional and brought us some spring here, saying that we are strong and healthy economy. However, there are lots of buts, right? So I would like to highlight them a bit more with my expert in this panel. And we have heard a lot of details about the economy in general and the very pragmatic issues, showing us the data as well as some recommendations, which are very helpful to design a further policy and the concepts of our country development, which actually is not based anymore on the labor force which is available, as it used to be, based on the unemployment rate two-digit number in years ago. Now we are struggling with a lack of labor force, with much different sources of productivity and internal issues, including the green economics and climate issues, together with health sector problems and stuff. So I would like to touch all of them now with my expert representing the academia, the practitioners analyzing the climate issues, as well as the administration from the Ministry of Health. But first, let me ask for the more global picture, having our guest from OECD, Mr. Kozluk. Would you be willing to present us the key issues of this global picture of the current situation and how all of these recommendations for Poland and highlighted in the report fit this into the picture?
Thank you very much. Dzień dobry Państwu. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk a bit about the global economy too. I think we're looking at a picture where I think our last economic outlook from December was titled Resilience in Uncertain Times. And I think that title actually does a very good wrap-up of where we are. I think the global economy has been very resilient in 2024. Some countries did better than others, but Poland was among the ones that had a very good year. I mean, we're coming out of a series of crises, and the Polish economy has been doing well. Unemployment is low. I think Susanna mentioned already, over the last 20 years, GDP per capita has basically doubled. These are enormous successes. But obviously at the OECD, we also look at what needs to be done, what are the challenges. And I think the challenges I want to talk about is, we sometimes summarize them as the 4 Ds, but we're coming back to a period of more stability amid high risks and high uncertainties, to a relatively low level of global growth, which may be a bit dissatisfactory. And even this level of growth faces some challenges. And the 4 Ds that I was mentioning, I'll start with the first one, is demographics. Yeah, I mean, demographics, in particular in Poland, we see that. I mean, aging is a good thing, actually. I mean, we all live longer, we live healthier. It's a societal achievement, but it has several challenges for the labor markets, basically less workers, at least without any changes in the labor markets. More pensioners, so more fiscal costs. More people needing longer-term care and higher health expenditures. All this comes at a time where, after these crises, we come with higher debt than the past. I mean, OECD countries' debt is some 50 percentage points of GDP higher than it was 20 years ago. I mean, this is quite a lot. And aging will put further pressures out. There'll be other pressures. There's defense, there's climate change, there's climate adaptation also that we need to deal with. So all these things are adding to the fiscal pressures that we have. We start with a relatively high primary deficit in Poland. So all these things, getting fiscal into order in the next years, that will be one of the key challenges linked to aging and the other costs. The second thing is, well, we call it deglobalization, but basically the uncertainty and the risks related to increasing trade tensions, increasing protectionism, is something that we've been seeing over the last 10 years. Obviously now the uncertainty around trade policy has increased massively, but preparing for that, making sure that the economy is prepared to deal with what comes from the outside, to deal with shocks, to be more productive, more competitive. A similar issue is digitalization. That's the third D, as I said. I mean, it's, the challenges and the opportunities that the digital economy offers, and especially in the recent days, months, everything is about AI, but it's the digital economy more generally. Preparing for that, preparing an aging population for the digital economy brings challenges, brings opportunities. And the last one, not least, obviously, is decarbonization, or basically climate change more generally. Combining the ambitions and the goals of climate change with issues of energy security and energy affordability is both a chance to improve energy security and energy affordability, but it's also a risk. If not done properly, it can increase the risks for both affordability and security, and hence not be publicly acceptable. So I think on the challenges, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. There is a very long list, actually, and some of them are pretty new, taking into account a very recent decision from the our great partner across the Atlantic in terms of trade policy. But again, how could you see the models of growth that what we know already shouldn't be adjusted somehow, or should we focus a bit how now need to be designed the model of growth of the economy? I'm addressing this question to our great expert about modeling of growth and the economy growth. Professor.
Okay, thank you. That's me. If you have any doubts. All right, so I can only share my thoughts that it's a privilege, and I'm really happy that I'm here with you. And before I start to talk about the growth model of Polish economy in broader sense, I would like to share with you my experience, which is something which makes me really proud being a Polish citizen, because when you travel abroad to other Central and Eastern European countries, like Hungary, Czech Republic, for example, and we are talking about, as experts from Warsaw School of Economics, about the results, about the past, unfortunately, but still, people use sometimes the expression Polish miracle. And it is really true. And of course, I know that for some of you who know the terms Wirtschaftswunder from the decade of 50s in Germany after the Second World War, you can say, oh, come on, what kind of miracle it is. But for people from other countries of Central and Eastern Europe, Polish example is a miracle. We manage to grow up really fast. And one of the slides we've seen during the extremely interesting presentation was about that catching up process. So it was something, using as the benchmark, not the OECD average, but the EU average, we can say that 20 years after we joined the European Union, we managed to went through 30 percentage point of GDP per capita, purchasing power parity. It was something, and it was done throughout the decade, the second decade of 21st century. It was, okay, we Poles should use this expression as well as miracle. But, there is always but. Let me again use the German expression, and our Western neighbors got a very good quote about that. Die fetten Jahre sind vorbei. What does it mean, die fetten Jahre sind vorbei? We face huge challenges currently. And to give you the example of those challenges, I use the term, we, with my colleagues from the research team of my department, we created the expression of institutional short-sightedness effect. And the examples of those short-sightedness effect seem visible during the OECD presentation. Yeah, because it's easy to say you should change the attitude in the area of family benefits. That's a very good advice. But again, it's extremely difficult to introduce this advice in a policy. Yeah, you should do something in case of taxation, maybe increase the property taxation, maybe to change the system. That's a very good advice. But how to do that, facing the democratic process of election and opposition, which will immediately start to yelling at us that we are increasing taxes. As Joseph Stiglitz once said, the idea of introducing harsh reforms is sometimes inefficient, because as a result of such policy, we will lose the next election and another group of politicians will come which destroy everything we made. And of course, Stiglitz said that when he was active in World Bank and discuss the outcomes of the transformation process. So this short-sightedness effect is visible not only in the area of policy, but again, in the area of long-term growth model. What we shall do, more or less everybody knows that, but it's not easy to introduce the proper policy in existing institutional framework. Yeah, because we know that we need innovation. Yeah, not only to increase the productivity, but to deal with decarbonization and green transformation. How to do that? It's not easy, and we struggle with that. It's not easy to spend money. One of the slides presenting the amount of money spending on healthcare was extremely good, because you've seen more or less the same amount for Great Britain and Japan, and the highest was for United States. What are the results? Of course, not the best for United States. Definitely not. They spend a lot of, especially private money, but the results are much worse compared to Germany and France, next to United States, and especially for Japan, taking into account the health for aging population. So we did a great job using the resources, mobilizing the productivity of labor force. But now we are facing the challenge, and as a last few sentences, to using the ecological metaphor, which I sometimes use talking about institutional framework of Polish economy. We need to find another niche for Polish economy, which is not easy, because those niches which are using the high-skilled labor and the production of high-tech products is occupied already. And it's not easy to take this niche. Yeah, because talking about foreign direct investments as a vehicle for growth during the past few years or past few decades, you can say that those stream of investments were fueled with cheap labor force. But you cannot reach the OECD average level or EU average level with low wages. You have to increase wages, but in such case, nobody would invest here. Those niches are occupied, I'm afraid. So we have to move, because now we are in the middle of the net of creating value. And we know, of course, know that the highest value is in the beginning, when there is research and development, and during the last stages, when there is a brand created. But we are in the middle. Yeah, the question is how to deal with that. Samely with the fiscal adjustment, lowering the spendings, and facing the political challenges. That is extremely difficult. So, not talking about Donald Trump, our American friend, and turbulent times, I would say that it's going to be extremely difficult for Poland for next 10 years.
Perfectly fine. We haven't had any model, but lots of questions again, which are needed to be answered in a very near future. However, I would like to focus a bit more on a very specific sector, which actually we are still, everyone is in. Every one of us sees how the healthcare works, how it used to work, how it is improving or not improving in some areas. And my very basic word, what I just have heard from my colleague, is a miracle. Do we have a miracle? Can we have a miracle in the healthcare system? Ms. Minister Kacperczyk, how will you comment on the recommendation presented in this report with regards to the health sector? These are any discrepancies with the existing direction of the healthcare reforms?
Has somebody said that there is a miracle in this health system.
Now the question is if we need have, if we have any.
No, thank you very much for this question, and also thank you very much for the report. I had the pleasure to work with the OECD during the preparation of the report, so we have a lot of meetings also between my team and the Ministry of Health, and also with the experts from OECD. So again, thank you very much, and thank you very much for including health in this year report. I mean, it's interesting discussion. I come also from this school, so that's why from this university. So that's why I read also the entire report also on economic recommendations and analysis, and a lot of them are pertaining to health as well. I think we passed already a time when we could see the healthcare system in the traditional way, and then also propose, as a consequence, traditional solutions. Because the world also after pandemic, COVID-19 has changed completely. We have also a very, I wouldn't say poor demographics in terms of healthcare system, because this we can say in terms of economy, that we have a aging society which poses the challenge. But in terms of aging, actually, it's a good thing, right? Because people are living longer, so they're happy. It means that we can offer also a lot of modern treatment to prolong the life, but also we have more patients, right? And then you have rightly mentioned the need to develop the long-term care. Thanks again for this comment. We also, I can already say that we have just started a comprehensive reform of the long-term care, and also developed like multi-sectoral approach, because in Poland, but also in many other countries, we tend to think about this health silos. And long-term care is an excellent example where a lot of institutions and ministries, in fact, have to work together. So we hope that we will be higher on the graph you have already presented for the next review. And I fully agree that it's one of the biggest challenge for European, not only Polish societies. We have also something to deal currently with, something we call it health debt after COVID. So as you know, we have increase in oncological, in cancer cases, not only in Poland, but also Commission has published today a report on flagging the increase of cancer cases in the European Union. This is also the effect of neglecting the early responses during the COVID time. So we call it also in the system the health debt, and also it poses also a big challenge in terms of financing of healthcare systems. Of course, war in Ukraine and the huge wave of migrants from Ukraine, this is additional challenge, not only for Polish, but also for other neighboring countries and their healthcare system. But of course, in Poland, nobody is happy about the healthcare system that we know.
So no miracle.
We know already. This is for years. This is nothing new. Surely there are a lot of things to be improved. But we have seen how we are lagging behind many countries in terms of, I don't know, number of beds or spendings for healthcare. We know who is the leader in Europe. It's Germany in terms of spending for health. Also UK. When we look, in fact, in the system now, what's going on there. So Germany has just started the biggest reform, or announced the biggest reform of healthcare system and also of hospital system and financing system. The same thing is in UK. So the system is really at its ends, meaning that increasing spending is not the only solution. So we should also think about other possibilities on how to reform the system. I agree with most of the recommendations you have proposed in the report. Obviously, we have to strengthen the primary health care to make it really a gatekeeper, because this is probably the main reason of why we call it where the long lines to get to the specialists. So we need a bigger responsibility of primary health care and to do some offer some services, procedures, diagnostic, which usually is being done either in the outpatient healthcare or in hospitals. The number of hospitals is indeed high, but we are not going to close any. So we are saying it. And you have suggested the rationalizing of hospitals network. Actually, we introduced recently the new legislation on this aspect, on reforming or saving the hospitals, especially the district hospitals, which are under supervision or ownership of the local authorities. And we're thinking in some different ways. So we are not thinking about rationalizing the hospital networks, but we're thinking about the rationalizing the healthcare services, in particular region, sub-region. Because whereas we believe that in most of the districts we need the hospital, but we don't need hospitals which everywhere offer everything, right? So all the services. So we have, over the last years, ministry has developed so-called map of health of needs. So we are now turning to services and try to rationalize and put the services in a way that all the patients' needs are taken care of, but at the same time we lower a little bit the pressure on both financing and also on number of nurses and doctors. And the last point, if I talk too much, then please interrupt me. I have been trained in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
I would like to know, because
talking long.
I know
I
you
know also
need
that-
to leave.
Yeah, I need
so
to
let
leave a little bit.
Let me just ask you one brief question with regards to aging population and also the effect of the aging staff. Right, in the hospitals, nurses particularly, which the average age is much over 55. So that's my very much concern with regards to the system reform and the hospitals. What we can expect in the next years in terms of this phenomenon of aging population together with the aging of staff in the system.
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, where we look at nurses, we have a number of, higher number of nurses in the age of 50 plus, 50. So I'm 50, so I'm thinking that. No, yes, no, of course. So that is also relative, right? The age span where we are employed has also changed. So when we look at 50, do we consider it's old, or we should go retired, or it's still like fully satisfying and fully professional workforce? But over the last years, then the salaries, both of doctors and medical staff and professionals and also nurses and midwives have increased significantly. For those of you who have read like recent report Health at Glance, so Polish nurses are one of the nurses in Europe who have the highest salaries. And rightly so, because over the years we know that how low the salaries for nurses and midwives were. But this is also the significant pressure for financing of the healthcare system. But we believe that, and we see already the early signs, we believe that the job will become so attractive, also financially attractive, that the number of nurses will also increase. We also try to invest in improving the working conditions, the offering some additional incentives, training to promote the attractiveness of this profession. I only mentioned that during the presidency we have launched in January together with the European Commission and then World Health Organization, a comprehensive initiative for nurses in Europe. So we hope that over the next year we will see some progress in that regard. Two aspects I need to mention also on the recommendation, and I thank you very much for this recommendation. The first is tobacco, alcohol, obesity, and etc. The absolutely root causes for our main killers, meaning cardiovascular diseases and oncological diseases. And we're doing a lot. I think more focus could be also put on the novelty tobacco, on non-tobacco products, because I think this is also from discussions with other colleagues in the European Union. This is the next biggest challenge we are facing in Europe. And also what's going on in Europe currently in terms of banning some products in different EU countries, this is also the moment where we should ask ourselves questions, do the prophylactics only work? So you have mentioned the tax, some other instruments, because I'm always giving these questions. Belgium recently has banned non-disposable cigarettes. If the prophylactic would work and education, information, where we all the time hear that here in Poland we spend not that much, but Western European countries, they're spending a lot of money on health prevention and prophylactics. So if it would work alone, then there would be no need to ban the cigarettes. So that this is also time for discussion on the entire set of instruments in terms of prophylactics. And we don't look at these problems only through the line of prophylactics, but also like a public health policies. So this is also the time and the need to look at it in a more comprehensive way. And the last point is the mental health. This is absolutely priority in Poland. We have announced probably one of the biggest investment in psychiatry ever in this country, almost 4.2 billion of Polish zlotys, which has already started to be spent on infrastructure and supporting of mental health. And mental health, especially the system for children and young generation, this is priority of our presidency. This is also the priority of the government, and I think that also the European Commission, but also OECD should also put much more attention on this issue, since it affects or will affect everything, starting from labor market, economy, all the aspects of the functioning of economy. And in terms of health for the next years, I mean, major challenges, I would see the mental health of children and young generation as the biggest challenge.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your insightful remarks from the Ministry of Health. Let me jump to another area of our interests, another issue that actually is a very hot topic for the last years, which is the climate and the climate policy. We do have our great expert here with us and my very close colleague from the Institute. That's why I give the floor to you, Maciek, now, not put you at the very first position. However, this is a great area of our interests in terms of the policy making, in terms of the changes of the priorities in the economic policy as well. What challenges do you see arising from the new EU climate and energy policy development? That's actually what we have seen in the one very major chapter in this report with regards to the basis of our economy development, which is still very much dependent on the generation of electricity from coal. This is again a very great advantage of ours, that we do have a great part of the economy created in industrial manufacturing. So there are like very contrary aspects of this area. So I would like to hear your voice and the comments on that, please.
Thank you. How much time do we have?
Well, I will correct you.
Okay. Thank you for having me here, and thank you OECD for preparing and submitting this review. And let me start with commenting the report and copy words of Mr. Pereira addressed to Poland. So I can say, well done, but and we can correct some findings, but to be honest, I like very much OECD reviews and OECD databases that I use in my job, especially on this area on climate and energy policy. In fact, as far as climate and energy policy is concerned, we are talking actually about everything, all areas of our lives, all economic sectors, because everything is influenced by global warming itself and climate policy measures. One important comment is that actually Poland, as a member of the European Union, must implement EU climate and energy policy. Accordingly, those climate policy targets, like reduction target, emission reduction target, or share of renewables in final energy consumption, are common targets of the European Union. So if we think about reduction targets, like 55% emission reduction in 2030, and somebody says that actually Poland is not able to deliver the target, so we must be more precise and say that Poland shall contribute to this common EU target for emission reduction, like 55%, probably 90% in 2040, and finally climate neutrality in the mid-century. By the way, we should always notice that we talk about net climate neutrality, what means that we are not able, not only Poland, but all sectors, all member states in the EU, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero. So significant important measure to achieve this climate neutrality is increase in carbon removals. We can say already now that that will become important part of EU climate policy, but also global climate policy, because there is too much unavoidable emissions that we are not able to reduce. So if OECD review says that, sorry, let me now refer to the National Climate and Energy Plan that we are obliged to submit to the European Union. And now we have the updated version, still a draft, so it is not decided yet. But first, Poland for many years has been received as a coal-based country. And in fact, in 2000, 95% of electricity in Poland was generated from coal, hard coal and lignite. Last year, it was slightly above 50%. It's still too much, but compare it to other countries, including EU member states. And this relative change is really impressive, I think. What was illustrated by your review, the same applies to renewables, share of renewables in electricity generation. And according to our studies, simulations that we do at the Center for Climate and Energy Analysis, by the way, I would recommend to use our reports in the next edition of OECD Review for Poland, at least in that field. We are able to perhaps not individually achieve climate neutrality, but our contribution to common EU target is satisfactory and accepted. We can see that also in the National Energy and Climate Plan that I mentioned before. And this comment that Poland used to be received as a coal-based country is old-fashioned, actually. Many people, institutions, think tanks, decision makers accepted very conservative addition, very conservative plan, because we know that it is really difficult for Poland to phase out coal, to phase out lignite and other fossil fuels, carbon-based fuels. And now we can see that actually our target for 2030 is above 50% as far as emission reduction is concerned. And this is individual target. So I think that we are quite on the right track towards those ambitious, let me emphasize that, ambitious EU climate policy goals. And one more topic in the OECD review that I personally like very much, carbon pricing, taxing emissions, taxing fuels. In this room, I think we all know that carbon pricing is the most effective and efficient measure to reduce emissions and to reduce use of fossil fuels. Of course, it doesn't sound politically correct, and not all would like to see that. Let me mention my personal dilemma with my students. Usually when I receive electricity bill, my blood pressure rises significantly. But now I am coming to such a room like this and I'm trying to convince students that electricity prices are too low. So yes, indeed, we have to apply more carbon pricing measures. But again, this is not only country national responsibility to apply such measures. As far as ETS is concerned, EU emission trading system, so we can only contribute to this centralized measure. Review says a bit about taxing fuels. We are just ahead of implementing ETS2. So a new emission trading system for buildings and road transport, what in practice means that all fuels, all carbon fuels, both those used for transportation and for heating in households will be taxed. European Commission says that well, we should expect carbon prices not higher than 45 euros per 1 ton of CO2 equivalent until 2032. It is high, but I think European Commission and more generally European Union would not be able to maintain this relatively low price after 2030. So we can expect, and this is another topic that we can continue.
I bet we can.
Impacts for the society. So, but let me stop now. Yes.
Thank you very much. As you see, there is 3 out of 4 people in this panel who are the lecturers, and we get used to talk during the 90 minutes in a row. But now, let me ask you a question, if there isn't a question, because our panel would last until 2:55. So I do have 2 more topics for further discussion. But if there is anything what you'd like to raise now, please feel free. Anything? Any comment? Yes, please.
As Elisa said, we can talk for hours on our topics, and we have not too much time to talk about this one. So let me just point it out that we all are aware that implementing ambitious EU just climate and energy policy and carbon pricing measures recognized as most effective and efficient tools to reduce emissions generates significant social impacts. So we should also focus on another side of the policy, supporting those sectors, those social groups that are most affected by climate and energy policy. That means that even if it costs, we should not avoid it. We should not ignore it. We should, as economists, not social policy makers, we support carbon pricing because it works. But we also understand that, well, we don't want to pay too much. Some extra costs for benefits that will be consumed by our kids and grandkids, actually. Because quite frequently we forget that climate policy, global warming, compared to other environmental issues is much, much long-term issue, and what we should do, what we must do now, will benefit next generations. So it is also a political challenge how to accept those difficult decisions if we think not about our kids and grandkids, but we think rather about next election. I think I should stop now.
Thank you very much. We are at the Warsaw School of Economics, so I would like to focus a bit more on economics per se, of drawing your attention to the phenomenon that actually we already touched with regards to the productivity, but through the aging population as the aspect of that. We have seen a very, very significant sentence at the one of the slides. There is a strong labor market. However, in Poland, the rate of aging will be one of the fastest growing, and the rate of dependency as the effect of that would also change very significantly within the next years. I'd like to ask Mr. Maszczyk about the productivity issue, which is less than in peer countries, that we also have seen. But the productivity convergence has been strong, but there is still room for further progress. How can this be achieved given the phenomenon of aging population now?
All right, so let's match those two topics with the growth model, and you are rewarded. Yeah, but you ask about models, so okay. So probably part of you are familiar with so-called neoclassical model of growth, which is sometimes called solo growth model. And based on the findings of this model, the growth rate of the economy is equal to the demographic growth rate. So the number of people which start to work, or the number of people in economy. So talking about growth from the empirical perspective, we should divide the factors of growth into two groups. The first one is number of people working, and this is for Poland especially, but for the whole Europe, this is a huge problem, because the variable which you will start to be familiar quite fast, or maybe you are familiar already, is the fertility rate. The fertility rate, so the number of kids per woman, and currently the fertility rate in Poland is the smallest in European Union. And in few years, probably, it will be below 1. Now it's close to 1. And to keep the number of people constant in economy, in a country, we need 2.1 fertility rate. Yeah, for 2 people having kids, 2, and this 0.1 is for some kind of accidents. So it's going to be below 1. What does it mean? According to the demographical forecasts, in year 2000, let's say 60, the number of people living in Poland would be below 30 million. What does it mean for growth? You can imagine. Of course, again, based on empirical findings, there is the productivity of factors of production. And we can somehow stimulate the productivity growth by investment and investing in new technologies. And of course, the nickname currently is artificial intelligence. But the problem is that there is a country which we can take as an example of such attitude. Yeah? So huge demographical problems and a huge focus on the productivity growth using the robotics and IT tools without success. And the example is, of course, Japan. A country without migration policy, because the Japanese society is one of the, most homogeneous all over the world. No migration at all to Japan. Aging population. Yeah, those of you who had the opportunity to visit Japan knows that the number of, to use this word, old people working there is enormous. Yeah, but still, from the early 90s last century, we can talk about stagnation in Japan. They did not manage to use the growth of productivity to offset the constant or the decreasing number of people working. What does that mean for Polish model of growth, for the Polish strategy? Firstly, we should immediately, that our colleague from the government has to left, but we should introduce immediately the migration strategy of Poland. Open borders for a wave of migrants, people who we need, for example, in the area of healthcare. Yeah, people will work in this crucial industry. Let's use this word, industry. We are keeping the more or less satisfactory growth rate till now, as we learn from the report of OECD, not only because, not maybe mostly because, but except other factors, because of the huge wave of people entered Poland. Yeah, when we calculate the number of people from Ukraine working in Poland, doing business in Poland, we can easily say that without this group, this 3% growth rate wouldn't be possible and won't be possible in future, taking into account the fertility rate. So knowing all of that, the demography, using this famous phrase introduced by Bill Clinton in the 90s, economy is stupid. we can say in Poland, demography is stupid. We should deal with that. Without that, we won't be able to reach either the EU average level GDP per capita or OECD average level GDP per capita. And I'm again part of the research team who introduced a few years ago. It was high citation because former Prime Minister, Mr. Jarosław Kaczyński, used the phrase, scientists from SGH proved that Poland will reach the German level of GDP per capita till end of the next decade. And of course, it was true, but it was only part of the truth, because it was the only positive scenario. In negative scenario, we will reach something about 80–85% of GDP per capita EU level, and this is it.
Let's be positive then, having over 2 kids, living healthy, breathing clear air, and let's educate and let's focus a little bit on that now. Despite the good educational outcomes of pupils that we have seen in a data, the share of adults with a higher level skills remains modest. So that's very questionable. That's really interesting. And the participation in trainings is low. I wonder if Poland has a chance to develop its sources of knowledge-based economy, rather than coal-based, rather than all of this stuff what we don't want to have. I'd like to address this issue to our experts from OECD and to my colleagues as well, to conclude everything what we just said.
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think the one thing to keep in mind was that little footnote that Susanna mentioned is about the low response rate to this particular thing. So I think we may be slightly underestimating the amount of skills or underestimating the amount of skills of Polish workers. In particular, that, as you mentioned yourself, the PISA results are actually quite good for a number of years now, a number of waves of PISA results. So a bit of caution on that. But that said, I think, well, first of all, there's no choice. I mean, I think the knowledge base of the society and the human capital accumulation will be the driver of growth, will have to be the driver of growth in Poland. So if you want to perform well, there's no choice than constant human capital improvements. That said, to a large extent, that will be happening, and I think that will be going on. The shortage of labor will incentivize some of the entrepreneurs and some of the employers to provide more training to improve the relations with the workers they have and improve their skills themselves. There's people that will not have the full access to this, right? We'll have a whole issue of maybe SMEs or some pockets of entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs that may not have the resources, may not have the full incentives to upskill in time. But a lot of it will be going on. I think the other issue there is, of course, a lot of the people with skills and with important skills for the labor market, or with skills that can be easily adapted to future needs, in Poland will be retiring in the next years and extending their work lives and making sure that they are part of this knowledge economy and that they are they have the adequate skills, but they also have the incentives to stay in the labor market and continue to improve their skills despite reaching an age that now seems to some people old enough to retire. I think that would also be a crucial thing. The immigration strategy, I think you mentioned that. That is, of course, also very important. I mean, with the current demographics, immigration in the last years has been an enormous help to the Polish economy. And immigration also brings skills, but also brings exposure to different experiences that can help innovate, that help shake up the model that we have. And I think that is also another element that adds to this. So I'm not so pessimistic about the skills and the skill prospects, but also I'm saying there's no choice. Unless this upskilling happens, then we will be stuck in a growth model that is not a growth model of the future.
Right. So,
Yes, I just.
okay, yeah. Now you know why in 19th century, in case of economic science, people used the expression "said knowledge," based on Thomas Malthus. Findings. They thought that economics is said. Okay, so maybe because we are, coming to an end of our seminar today, something positive. If I have to say something about knowledge-based economy based on the historical data, I would say no way. Because we take into account the spendings on R&D, private, public, number of patents registered, such stuff, no hope at all. But this time, but would be positive. But I would say that Polish economy, people in Poland, are so vital. They want to get rich. Yeah, this American expression, I believe, get rich or die trying, is still reality in Poland. People really struggling to earn more, to work more, to deal with all of the bureaucracy, the obstacles. Yeah, we want to reach the success defined mostly in a way of income. So I would say that from that point of view, there is still not only hope, but chance for Polish economy, that we manage to deal with this problem. And those miracles, if we come back, let's say 15 years ago, probably the same, maybe not me, but another Piotr Maszczyk would say, no chance, come on, guys, we are doomed. And 15 years later, you say, it's nice, yeah? And what I would like to stress, no matter what kind of government we have, the left wing, right wing, because it was the whole political scene got the opportunity to create a government. But no matter of that, we managed to catch up. So to create maybe a little bit positive view, that's a chance, that we managed to do because we just want to do that. So yes, we can, as Obama said.
Thank you very much. Questions, concerns, comments? The time is for you.
I would like to raise some question with regard to your report. So unfortunately, I came late, and maybe you have already mentioned it during presenting your report. So many times during today's discussion, has been posed the statement that due to improve the Polish healthcare, simply it should be much more money, much more spending. And my question to you, maybe you see other solutions of this problem. What's your view?
Shall I answer now? So, thank you for the question. I would not say that we're advocating for just more money, full stop. Now, as it has been pointed out, the highest spender on that graph was the United States, and UK, as the Deputy Minister mentioned, is also there. I would not want to go for my health treatment either in the United States nor in the UK. In the United States, I'm going to go bankrupt. and in the UK, I'll probably have to get it fixed in France. You know, so more money does not necessarily lead you to the best healthcare outcomes. It is true that, you know, the Polish healthcare system has been underfunded for some time, and the authorities are putting more money into it. And there is this political consensus about increasing the spending to this 7% of GDP by 2027. This is the public part. You have to add up to it the private, what we are all paying when we go to the doctor. And it will get you close to the OECD average. But what's really important is how you use that money. Because the experience of the most recent years in Poland has been that a lot of it has gone onto wages. And yes, the wages have been low, but now they have caught up. And also there is this experience of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at some point the limit to going to see specialists has been abolished, and anybody can go and see as many specialists as you want. So this means like putting more money into the system. But the problem of the queues hasn't been solved. So that just shows you that it's not enough to just put more money into it. You have to figure out how to use that more efficiently. And with the specialists, you know, what the deputy minister mentioned here, the role of general practitioners acting as a gatekeeping role, or with today's opportunities of digitalization, you know, having your own health record where anybody will be able to see, have you gone to see 3 specialists and was it really necessary? Sometimes you have to go for a second opinion, fine. But perhaps, you know, if you go to see a 3rd one, maybe you should be paying for it yourself because you've already seen 2. Why should it be the public system? So don't get me wrong, and we're not just advocating for more money, full stop. It's what's really important is how that money is being used. And that's why we see that there's lots of other incentives that could be used to make sure that healthcare is used rationally. Because unfortunately, when it comes to healthcare, we are all irrational when we are patients, right? We all want to see as many specialists. We all want to get the best treatment and the most expensive drug. But that's not necessarily what's efficient from the kind of state point of view or public finance point of view. Maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What I'd like to say, I did my job as the moderator. That's the very first point. But being seriously, the long journey starts with the small steps. And I believe we made one small step in diagnosing the situation in Poland, in seeing objectively through the eyes of the OECD what's the situation going on, and hearing the perspectives and the challenges what are behind the energy sector, climate issues, and the healthcare, finalizing all together by the perspective of the total economy. Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you for this great opportunity to host OECD experts at SGH and hearing your great job and having this very hot report as the great material for us, for researchers and economists. Let me thank to my great panelists and distinguished disputants with applause. And have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much.